fundamental, basic principles of Judaism is that of reward and punishment. If we do good, we'll receive reward. If we do less good things, we'll be punished. The truth is, it's the way our lives work, whether it's at home or at work, in our relationships. We're used to feeling cause and effect, reward and punishment. So if this is such a basic part of our lives, like any deal, we should investigate the deal. A lot of times we spend time focusing on what are the good deeds that we're supposed to do in order to receive the reward. We speak about the mitzvot. We speak about ben adam lachavero, ben adam lamakom, and the averot, the transgressions. Things we're not supposed to do, whether it's speaking lashon hara, speaking evil about our neighbors, or if it's driving on Shabbat. All the different various transgressions and the different mitzvot, this occupies a lot of our time, and rightly so, as we'll discuss soon. But what I want to focus on with you today is the other side of the coin, the flip side. Reward and punishment. Well, what is the reward for doing all these mitzvot? And what is the punishment for leaving those mitzvot and transgressing against the prohibitions of the Torah? What is the reward which the Torah tells us about? Perhaps we've heard about Olam Haba, the world to come. We've heard about that in the future days the Messiah will come and give reward to all those who merit it. What exactly is the resurrection of the dead? And who is it for? Who will merit to be resurrected? And who will be perhaps left to be punished in hell? Many different concepts we have about reward and punishment. So what I'd like to do today with you is to investigate a little bit what the reward and punishment are according to our sages, according to the Jewish tradition. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin, the 10th parak of tractate Sanhedrin, speaks about judges, says that all of Israel have a portion in the world to come. Every Jew is going to merit, has a place in the world to come. That's wonderful. What is the world to come? Where is it? When is it? And how are we going to merit it? And what are the details of this reward and the punishment? Perhaps the flip side, if we're not in heaven, the world to come, perhaps we'll be in hell. What does that look like? What does that feel like? These are the questions that we want to explore today. So what I'd like to do is follow a discussion of over 800 years old. It was penned by the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. You may have heard of him. Born in 1138, excuse me. The Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, as the acronym suggests, he was born in Cordova, Spain in 1138. And his father was a prominent leader of the community. Because of that, they had to move. They had persecutions. They moved throughout Spain for a little while, then to Fez, Morocco. He took a trip, the family, the Rambam's family, when he was young, under 20 years old. He came to Israel. He was in Israel at the age of 27, if I'm not mistaken. And when he arrived in Israel, he was so excited, so happy. He wished he could stay. And he declared the day that he arrived in the land of Israel to be a holiday for his family, for his children, to be born in the future, for his children's children, for all generations. In any case, unfortunately, the Rambam felt, young Rabbi Moshe felt that he could not survive in Israel and he had to move on. Ultimately, he spent most of his life in Egypt, in Fustat, near Cairo, where for over 40 years he taught the Jewish people Torah, and not only the Jewish people, he acted as a doctor. He was the doctor of the Sultan in Egypt, wrote over 11 works on medicine, And of course, what we're going to discuss is some of his writings about Judaism. He started writing even at a very young age. First thing he wrote was his list of the 613 commandments which are listed in the Torah. The Rambam put them together and enumerated them and explained which ones he puts in, which ones he puts out. And the next work which he worked on, he started out at the age of 23, finished it when he was 33, was his commentary to the Mishnah. The Mishnah being the canon of the oral Torah up to the time of the Tanaim. But yet, the Rambam felt there was no proper commentary which covered all of the Mishnah from the beginning to the end, and he set out to explicate and explain the details and the rationales behind each and every Mishnah. When he finished at the age of 33, he embarked upon his next work, perhaps the most famous and the most courageous work ever undertaken by a Jewish scholar, and that was his Yad HaChazakah, his strong arm, the 14 books in which he tried to summarize the whole complex, not only of the Mishnah and his commentary on it, but also the Gemara, the Talmud. And not only did he summarize it and set it forth so that even the layman could have access to the Torah, to the oral Torah, which was written down at the turn of the century, between the years 0 and 500, 600. But also the Rambam ordered it. He ordered it into a classification system of 14 books, which was a novel concept, had never been done. He changed the order of the oral Torah from the way it was presented in the Talmud and the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and he put them into 14 books, classified by topic. And this work, he started at the age of 36 and finished it at the age of 46. After that, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, the Rambam, Maimonides as he's called, at the age of 53, he wrote his famous work called Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, in which he focuses more than in all of these other works on philosophy, issues of how to interpret the Torah itself, the Bible, and to understand many of the words. And in that work, we see how he was influenced, by many of the philosophers of his day. And at the age of 54, after completing all of his major works, the Rambam sits down to write the letter about Techiyat HaMitim, the resurrection. Some of his works became widely known, very popular around the Jewish world. And he got many letters asking him about this point or that point. What did you say? What did you mean? Perhaps you're contradicted by this source or that source. And Maimonides wanted to explain himself. He wanted to correct perhaps misrepresentations that people were spreading in his name. And he wrote this letter about Techiyat HaMitim, the resurrection of the dead, in which he wanted to clarify his words, which he felt were being misunderstood. So what we're going to focus on and follow is the discussion of Maimonides about the world to come, about the resurrection, about the Messiah, about heaven and hell, what the difference is between Gan Eden, what is the Garden of Eden, and so on and so forth, focusing on that first Mishnah which we quoted earlier. All of Israel have a portion in the world to come. In his first major work, his commentary on the Mishnah, when the Rambam reaches this Mishnah, this comment in the Mishnah, he writes a small essay in which he discusses what exactly is the reward, what exactly is the punishment which we are all waiting for, which we can expect, which is part of this deal, reward and punishment, which is a basic fundamental principle of Judaism. So without further ado, let's begin. First thing the Rambam mentions in his Hakdama, in his introduction to Perek Chelek, he says that in order to understand these issues, you have to have the wide view. You have to have the whole picture in front of you. You can't just pick out one verse here in the Bible and one statement of the sages over there. Because if you do that, you can reach some really strange conclusions. And he says, as a matter of fact, he brings examples of 5 different common misperceptions, 5 groups of people who have an idea in their head, what exactly is the reward, what exactly is the punishment, and he sets out the following 5 groups. The first group, the Rambam says, they focus on the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden must be a place where there's food and drink, delicious food and drink, of all kinds, rivers flowing with wine, houses which were built, the biggest palaces that you can imagine, an ideal picture of somebody who has no cares in the world. He can indulge himself in all of the physical pleasures of the world, whether it be in his relationships, whether it be with other people, by himself, eating, drinking, sleeping, and so on and so forth. This is what many people feel is Gan Eden. And the opposite, that's the reward. The opposite, the punishment, is hell. We've heard of Gehinnom, and there's descriptions of fires that are from here up until the skies, burning and torturing those souls which have to be punished. They didn't merit, they didn't play their cards right. And essentially, heaven and hell, burning in hell versus living in the Garden of Eden. This is the first group. And he says, very interesting, about each and every group, the Rambam says, it's not like they are coming from nowhere. There are certain statements in the sages. There are certain verses in the Bible which can be interpreted to mean that this is the reward that's being promised to us, and this is the punishment. There is Garden of Eden, which all kol tuv, all the goodness of the world is available to us, and then there's torture and punishment by those who have to be punished. But the Rambam said, of course, this is mistaken. This is seeing a very small part of the picture. The second group focuses not on Gan Eden, but on Mashiach, Messiah, the times of the Messiah. We know complete religions who have been so enamored by this idea of what's going to happen when the Messiah comes. And in the times of the Messiah, people will be strong, there won't be any weakness. People essentially will be supermen. They'll live forever. They won't have any sickness. There won't be any death. They'll live strong and healthy and happy for the rest of their lives, forever essentially. Obviously, they imagine if people are supermen and they're living forever, it's also the food that they eat. People don't have to go to work. The ground itself will grow, not wheat, which we have to grind and knead the dough and bake it, but the ground itself will grow beautiful loaves of bread. Right? Ready-made food, we're not talking about TV dinners, but wonderful meals will be available free of charge and naturally provided for man. It won't have to work at all. Everything will be easy. Clothing. It's not like we're going to have to, the ground is going to grow the cotton or the linen. And we're going to have to take the wool off the sheep and shear it and clean it and process it and weave it and create clothing. But everything will be available at our fingertips instantaneously, if you will. Designer clothing will be falling off the trees, and wake up in the morning, you go outside to your garden, and there's your starched shirts ready and prepared for you, because that's the way the world works in the time of the Messiah. The Rambam, of course, uses this to take to the extreme many verses, many statements of the sages, but he says this is false as well. The third group, which doesn't seeing the whole picture, they focus on this idea of the resurrection. Techiyat hamitim. The dead will come back to life. How many of us wish and hope to once again see our loved ones, to be able to spend time with them, not only our loved ones, but our beloved leaders of the past generation, perhaps generations before that. And the height, the ultimate reward that one can have, according to this group and this way of thinking, is that we participate. We are alive. We're lucky enough to be chosen, to be resurrected, to live at the time of the resurrection. And the punishment is to miss the boat, not to be included, not to be resurrected. The fourth group, this perhaps is a little more similar to what we're familiar with in the Torah, and that focuses on success, both personal success. Everybody who lives in the future time, everybody who gets the reward will be successful, he'll be rich, he'll be famous, but not only on the personal level, but also politically. The Jewish people will be in charge, they'll be running their own government, they won't be being told what to do. Perhaps there'll be no more wars. Perhaps we will not, let's say it this way, no IRS, no taxes will be taken from us. Whoever merits will be successful, both on the personal level and on the national scale. And whoever has to be punished will not have such success. The fifth group, very quickly, the Rambam says, and perhaps that's what all of us might have some image of in our minds when we talk about what is the reward of the Torah, what is the punishment for not keeping the Torah, is a jumble of all those things together. We think, we say it every day in our prayers, we're hoping for the resurrection of the dead. We think a lot about, we want Mashiach, we want the times of the Messiah to come. And of course we want success, political freedom, as opposed to the time of the Galut, which the Rambam was writing in. But all of these five groups, Maimonides says, they're missing the boat. They don't have the whole picture. They don't have the big view. And in the bigger view, the Rambam says, they're missing a discussion and understanding. What is Olam Haba? All of Israel have a portion in the world to come. What is the world to come? What is it? When is it? Where is it? This is the focal point of the Rambam's discussion. People will ask you questions about the resurrection. How exactly are people going to be resurrected? What will they be wearing? Will they be rich? Will they be poor? In the time of the Messiah, will there be different parts of society? Before we conclude our introduction and our discussion of these various types of rewards, which are descriptions of the future world, there's one important statement that the Maimonides makes, that the Rambam makes, in the Laws of Kings in the 12th chapter, second halakha, something to keep in mind. The Rambam says, Kol elu hadvarim v'chayotze behem. All these matters which we've been discussing, what's going to happen in the future, lo yeda adam ech sheyihiyu ad sheyihu. A person does not know how are they going to be until they come to be. We don't have a one-to-one prescription. We don't have a one-to-one knowledge exactly how the events of the future days are going to come to be. But what we would like to get is an idea of the big picture. What is the world to come? How it fits in with the resurrection, how it fits in with the days of the Messiah. And that's something which we're going to investigate in the coming lectures. Shalom.